You will sleep better than you have ever slept. You've never been this relaxed. Are you ready to change your life? I'm Rusty Diamond, certified hypnotist. You don't need to leave your house. You can stay in your bed. You can stay in your favorite chair. You just need a computer or your phone. You can get a hold of me. Stay at home. I'll make your life better.
Hypnosisisgreat.com.
It's Rusty Diamond, motherfucker. It's Rusty Diamond, motherfucker.
Yo, man. Hello, Miss Rusty. What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Public Access Podcast, the podcast now in Pennsylvania, the podcast because of PA. Thank you, everybody, for being here and listening. If you are listening and you did not know that there is a video version of this, there is, and you can go on to YouTube or Rumble and search the Public Access Podcast. Do not search Public Access Podcast because that is some poser that took my name, sort of. But I'm the real deal and I was here first. So, yeah, so shout out to them. And if you are watching this and you like the content and but you don't want to watch, that's cool too. You can go pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can find the Public Access Podcast. Again, not Public Access Podcast. And you'll see my face probably, which maybe you're trying to avoid if you're going from watching it on video to listening to it on audio. You find it anywhere. So thank you again, everyone, for being here and taking in this podcast, however you take it in. So thank you very much. And now it's time for me to bring on my special guest. And my special guest is right here and right now. And my special guest right here and right now is Vanessa Soul. Thank you for being here, Vanessa. Happy to have you here on this day of the week, whatever day of the week it is right now.
Right, whatever day it is. Thank you, Rusty. Happy to be here. It's been a while since I've been on someone else's podcast as a podcast host. So as you know, it's kind of nice to be a guest here and there. So super excited.
It's fucking great. I love it. I love being a guest on someone else's podcast. It's just being able to, you get on and you talk and then that's it. And you
It's
you
kind of
sign
nice,
off
like
and you're
not
done.
steering the ship all the time.
Right. Yeah. I don't know what to do. I'm just like, okay, I'm just sitting back. I'm just doing whatever. And it's pretty nice. I love hosting the show and have my voice crack too, which is fun. But yeah, it's a whole different ball game going on someone else's podcast. And I don't know if I do it enough. I think I would like to do it more, especially now that, I'm quote unquote taking a little bit of a break from this show to work on everything else. But yeah, I mean, it's like we were talking earlier, it's hard to take a break and you can fall out of rhythm
Yeah.
pretty quickly, lose that muscle memory of whatever the show is.
Yeah, it's like a tightrope dance with podcasting. You can't, I mean, you can go to one extreme, but you'll have to move yourself back somewhat towards the middle at some point.
Right. Absolutely. That's a good way to put it. Haven't done too much tightrope walking. more than have you ever done tightrope walking?
Not physically.
Not
No.
mentally, you've done tightrope walking.
Well, like, yeah, as a metaphor, like I feel like just the balance of life, right? I'm constantly thinking of that as a analogy for my life.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. And it's um yeah, I mean it's hard once you get to that middle to stay
Stay.
stay there. And it's like be that it's okay and not be like, okay, well I made it to the middle. I guess I can go back now. I can probably ease up a little bit, but it's good to stay in the middle and get to the middle. I guess eventually you have to get to the other side, but it doesn't have to be for a long time. You don't have to go and get to the middle and then, but maybe you can get in the middle and do some flips and all kinds of stuff that people do on the tightrope. It's a crazy thing to be able to walk on a tightrope anyway, but uh I've tried it even on the one where it's just a few, like maybe a foot off of the ground, and that's even kind of hard.
Right.
But um yeah, so what's kind of the longest you've gone with your podcast, like on a between an episodes that you've recorded?
Well, let's see. I started my podcast in October, so it hasn't quite been a year yet, but I think I'm at like 55 episodes because I do 2 a week.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm that extreme person that I was just talking about, like not walking the tightrope. But I think when I did have a break in, I don't know, it was sometime in the spring, it like early spring. It was probably 3 weeks because I had plenty of episodes like pre-recorded.
Yeah.
Plus I'm a digital nomad. So I had just landed
Cool.
in my new location. I'm still here in that same location in Tulum, Mexico, but I had just landed. So I was doing a little bit of the touristy stuff and then I take my business everywhere I go. So I really had to focus on my clients. But yeah, I think it was 3 weeks. And at that time, I didn't feel like I got out of my groove. I felt like that was like a much needed break. And then I felt like when I did come back to podcasting, it wasn't it wasn't like it never really became a chore, but if I wouldn't have taken the break, I think I would have felt a little obligated, that energy. So it
Yep.
was good.
I know that energy. Yeah, I kind of did similar. I had a while. So were you ever getting like up in the time when you were getting really far ahead? I mean, even though you're doing 2 a week, were you doing something like, okay, well, we're recording this today, but this is December 1st, and this will be out in May, second week of May or something. Do you ever get kind of far ahead like that,
I
or is
I
it
got a little far in a few, and I realized I don't really prefer that because when I release the episode, I feel like, man, I've grown as a podcaster since then. The topic or maybe our perspective on like whatever myself and the guest were speaking of. It was like our perspective 6 months prior, so it felt like an outdated episode. So I try not to go that far in advance.
right? And so that's a good thing, that your perspective can change and evolve, and it's not just one perspective, and that's what it's kind of going to be like for you put that episode out, and that's what it's going to stay. It's always good to have that evolution, and it's hard sometimes with that too. And so, do you have it where you have twice a week? Do you have a certain time, like it's going to drop? One's Tuesday at 6 p.m. and the other one is Friday at 6 p.m. or something?
I do a guest episode. Yeah, I release it 4 a.m. every Tuesday. So one got released. We're recording this on a Tuesday. One got released this morning. In fact, something was wrong with it actually didn't post automatically, but I happened to be up at 4 and I caught it. So
Okay.
I was like, gotcha. Oh, and then my second episodes during the week are a solo episode. So I do that. I release that every Saturday. So guests every Tuesday and then solo episodes every Saturday.
So then What were you doing up at 4 in the morning? Do you wake up at 4 in the
Not,
before 4 in the morning?
it was just what I was like, what am I doing up? I'm like, no. You know, I could be an early riser, but that was still a little too early for me. I was up from like 2 to 4, really. I probably went back to
Okay.
sleep at 4:30. But I was like, I'm that crazy person at 4 a.m. doing like Kundalini yoga and rigorous exercise, trying to like exhaust myself so I can go back to sleep. And it works. It works every time. I love Kundalini yoga, by the way. Have you done it? Heard of it?
What is that?
Really? You haven't
Yeah,
heard
no,
of it?
I haven't.
Oh my God, I'm obsessed.
Yeah. Oh, well, then you're gonna have to tell me about it. I have to know now.
Okay, so it is a form of yoga. Everyone knows what yoga is. So it is movement. Although it's a different breed of yoga. It's not like your typical, slow-mo vinyasas that we're pretty used to when we see people on social media doing those, or we walk by our local yoga studio, we see everyone in there doing like downward dog together. It's repetitive movement, and it's a traditional practice, Kundalini yoga. So it's a ancient practice, just like all yogas. But what it looks like is a repetitive movement over and over again. So just here on the video, I'm just gonna put my arms on my shoulders. And here's one of the movements, just like twisting side to side. And you're doing that movement for about anywhere from 1 to 3 minutes. And you're also pairing it with your breath. So in Kundalini yoga, breath of fire is one of the main processes for the breath. And it's pretty hard to do for 3 minutes. It's like a sharp exhale through the nose. So think of like a dog panting, like a dog would pant with his mouth open, like you probably can't hear it because of the mic, but just over and over again, like those exhales, and your mouth is closed and you're doing it through the nose. And you're doing those movements, right? So right now I'm doing a twisting movement side to side with the arms raised. And yeah, and you kind of do that, works with your energy field, works with your chakras. It's definitely so good for stress. It's rigorous exercise. So some of them you're doing a lot of ab stuff or a lot of leg stuff. So you could be toning as you're doing these exercises, but it's also so good for the mind, body, and soul.
How'd you get into that? Were you doing different kind and then stumbled upon that, or was this how you got introduced into yoga?
No, I did the regular run-of-the-mill yoga for a while. I think during COVID, I just started exploring YouTube. We were all going down some type of
Yep.
YouTube rabbit hole, right? Not, and
Yeah.
I think nowadays, I think you could find, I mean, I say nowadays, it's only 4 years later, but I think people run across Kundalini yoga without going down a rabbit hole on YouTube, but it might just pop up on their page if they're already watching yoga videos. But yeah, I think I just wanted to try some new stuff, and we all had more time on our hands during that time. And then, but I realized how helpful it was, because I was in real estate during the beginning of COVID. I mean, I did it for 7 years total, but I was kind of like on my way out. So just like the stress of like all the house deals that I had, where it was like all going awry, I'm like, I need something for stress. And Kundalini yoga was so good.
Where were you at that point?
I was in West Hollywood, like I was
Oh,
in a New York style city apartment. So like really small studio on the busiest corner in LA, in West Hollywood. So Sunset Boulevard, if anyone knows. And it's like it's where all the lights, all the stars, all the action is happening. And then all of that went completely dead.
oh, damn. Okay. And so, I
So it's
mean,
kind of
what
eerie.
happened then? So then you just,
Yeah, so it was tough because I got like a really small studio. It was like 400 square feet. I was a real estate agent, and I worked outside of a WeWork, of WeWork, right?
yeah, whereas like
And
everyone has basically not rent an office, rent like the space, share the space
yeah,
with a bunch of
kind of like
people.
rent an office. Yeah,
Yeah.
or you can just rent a desk, right? And then if you're an entrepreneur, it's kind of nice because they have mixers. They always have events at the WeWork, so you can mingle with other people who do their own thing. Or there's small companies there too. It's not all entrepreneurs. But so my whole life, the reason why I was so cool with having a small studio, like before COVID happened, I got that place. One, I was transitioning out of I was downsizing because I had just left a long-term relationship. But two, I was living in West Hollywood. I was like, wow, everything is right here. Like the yoga place, my meditation place, the WeWork, it was all like right like below my studio, and all the restaurants and
Cool.
coffee shops. So before the lockdown happened, I felt like I had a great life because I was always out and about. I was always outside of my place because everything I needed was outside, like, the gym, and it was all walking distance, or I would just hop in my car, or for real estate appointments, I was always gone. But when everything shut down and I was like forced to stay inside the 400 square foot place, I was like, oh, this is a completely different experience.
Yeah. And yeah, and being in California, it was pretty uh well enforced. And wow. So then, okay, I mean, so I mean, you couldn't go, like, so I guess then the WeWork, the yoga, none of that was all just totally, you couldn't go to it. There wasn't any, like, you can go in here, but you have to wear a mask and be, 6 feet away from people, or was it just like, there's no way we can do this, so we're just closing it down?
Yeah, the WeWork was probably the only exception for a little while because they were still charging us as members
Oh,
the
no
whole
shit.
entire time.
Whoa.
Right. So I think that stayed open, but it was still weird going in there. By that time, it's almost like I didn't want to be in there because it was like pretty empty. Like they didn't have the music playing, people weren't playing on the pool tables, like the bean bags were all, it just had like this, it was so great for like a social work life culture. And then it used to be like this fun place to have your business. And then, yeah, the vibe, the energy just changed after that. So I was still going in there, but eventually I just I just was like, I'd rather just work at home. If no one else, I'm the only one in this me and the front desk person in this big building. And it's just like not worth it.
Yeah, and if you're, I mean, yeah, if you're paying for that, like, you may as well and just do it at your studio. I mean, all you need this much room, really, to be able to do anything. And so was that something that changed with your business then? Was it, you got into, because, with you being digital nomad now, did you just figure, okay, hey, like, I had an office, but all I need is this. I need this right here. I need this much space. I can do whatever I want, wherever I want. Was that something you
Yeah, I
kind of
mean,
got
it
to?
was it was so many shifts. So now I'm not even doing the same thing. So at that time, I was a full-time real estate agent in Los Angeles. So I had to be there locally for the most part. The following year in 2021, I figured out a hack. I figured out a way to move to Austin, Texas. So I got out
Okay.
of the strict California restrictions. And then with just the real estate culture, everything was happening remotely. Like it was just so normal not to meet your clients in person anymore. And like real estate agents were not showing their clients the houses directly anymore. So we would just give them a code to the lockbox and they would go on their own. So I was able to kind of like leave, like actually pick up and leave Los Angeles and still sell
Cool.
houses for the following 6 months without even being there and without telling people I was gone. So my clients still thought I was there. It was just the normal thing not to have to be in person all the time. So I still
So
did real estate for a while. And then eventually, I think leaving California, I just started to naturally shift out of real estate and I started my own business.
yeah, and so I mean, were like people going, and so you get in the code to it, and then they have you on their phone or something, and you just be doing that, or they just hit you up afterwards? You just let them in there, do their thing, and then they be like, "Oh, hey, Vanessa, I like this house," and you're like, "Oh, okay. Well, let me." I mean, did you have like what was the background you had going? Do you have a background like this on your wall then, or did you have something that was like right outside from where you used to live, like, oh, this is where, some green screen or something, or it was just, wherever, I guess. And was that, I mean, I don't know, because I mean that'd be kind of interesting. And like, do you think that could have stayed, or is that something that once it went back to whatever it was,
Sure, yeah, I'll give you
that
some insight. So yeah, it definitely went back to being in person as it should. I mean, real estate is such a relationship type business. And you do have this, well, at least the real estate agent needs to see, I mean, hopefully the client too, hopefully the home buyer is seeing the property in person. Um, and I had a second thought too. I think a lot of my clients were sellers at that time. So that's also what made it easy for me is I was the listing agent. There's two agents for each side. So that probably saved me a little bit more legwork. But yeah, it's such a relationship-based business. It did go back. And by that time, I had already I felt like I was satisfied with the clients that I had, like on my way out type of thing. Like it gave me the financial freedom to start a whole other business and spend 80% of my time grinding it out, working and like building my brand new business from scratch, which as most people hear this, you guys probably know how difficult that is. But being a real estate agent and then just spending 20% of my time with my existing clients or overflow clients or whatever that is, it just made it super easy. But yeah, it went back. But by the time it went back, I was like, I was totally fine not living in LA, and I had already had my other business up and running.
So what was it that uh was there something that just was like, I gotta go and get to Austin? There's a podcast that I listen or watch and listen to, that they were at the Comedy Store there, and then when the shutdown happened, they went to Austin and are doing the show there, just because it was like you couldn't really do much. So then what was that like when you got to Austin and you had a different, kind of, you didn't have any restrictions, I guess. Like, did you think like, oh, I can go and do this now, or were you already into, um, I'm into my new business? And then I guess second question on that was, uh, when you get around people, is that more energizing for you, or are you a person who needs to be alone to re-energize yourself?
Yeah, those are great questions. I'll answer the second one first. I think it depends on what I'm doing. you know, Again, as a real estate agent, I was like super social, like even while I was working, because I feel like I like real estate was eventually it was super easy to me. So it was like kind of like the social interaction at the WeWork, or like constantly walking around and like, be like, hey, what are you working on? I'm working on this. It just kind of kept the day fun. But now that I'm doing something different, I'm a purpose coach now. But when I first started my business, it was more like emotional healing, spiritual healing when I first started in 2021, 2022. So now I think I work a little bit better alone. Like where I'm at now, there's one main digital nomad co-working community. It's really cool because you get to meet so many people from either the States or Europe, or because I'm in Mexico, right? So people who are like not from here, but they also have remote businesses. It's a great way to network. But unfortunately, Rusty, I haven't even been to that. I've been here 3 or 4 months, and I keep telling myself, like, okay, I'm going to go to the co-working event. I'm going to go to the co-working thing, because they travel around as a group and they go to a different cafe every day. Fun, right?
Cool.
Bring
Yeah.
your laptop, hang out with people, order some food. But I just haven't got to do it much, partly because I do like a lot of one-on-one stuff. So I need to be in my own private space. But even when I'm working on like some of the back end or my social media, I think I just get into my own flow when I'm just like at my place, so I never make it to as many co-working groups as I would want.
Um, And so does that, let's see, okay, I guess my question then would be, when you were transitioning into your new job, when you first made it your first business, um, what I don't know if you've answered this on other podcasts, you talked about on your podcast, which you probably have. Um, but I'm curious, uh, what was it that what was the first thing you offered? Like, what
Great
was there?
question.
Was there a number of things, or what was the first thing you're like, this is something that I can offer, and then I'll build on that, or was it a few
Yeah,
things?
no one has asked me this question. I love that
That's
you asked me.
Thank
I
you.
think about this moment often because it was the significance behind it was like it was my first paying client in my business. You know what I offered? I actually didn't know what I was doing. So I think I just offered a 30-minute session and I can't remember what I called it. I think I just called it support, like hey, do you want a 30-minute support session? Right.
Cool. Yeah,
And
I
eventually,
like
and
it.
have you ever heard of the app called Clubhouse?
Yeah, yeah, it's the one where
The audio
you
chat
that
app?
you call, yeah, not call, but yeah, you're yeah,
Yeah,
I've
it's like
it,
people, like groups of people, you use your phone and you're all in this audio chat group together. You pick a top, there's topics that you pick. Anyway, it was big
yeah.
during the pandemic and even a little after the pandemic, I think. But luckily I had used that for networking during COVID and not even for business purposes. I think I just found a new group of friends online in the audio chat apps. And so it was someone who somewhat knew me. And so they didn't really mind like the fact that I was so vague, like, hey, I am offering a 30-minute support session. And they literally just wanted someone to talk to for however long, 30, 45 minutes. That was my first person. And then from there, I started to do more psychic work because that's one of my natural skills and abilities, doing psychic work. So then I did like little small mini sessions in that Clubhouse app. So it'd be a group of people would like come in and basically in a virtual line. And then they would just ask questions about like their love life or, like their job or like life stuff, right? Like, hey, what do I need to know about my marriage or about this new job I got? And so, and that was pretty cool because it was a group experience and people would just like pay like $10, right? Each. And I'd just spend 2-3 hours doing it a day. And then
Cool.
from there, I started to build a stronger offer. Then I was like, okay, I really want to do, because again, I'm more on the woo-woo side. So energy work, psychic work. Then I started to build a bigger and better offer at the time and just offered like an hour and a half intuitive healing session. And then it went from there.
How do you get into the woo-woo world? How did that happen? It's usually an interesting way, and I don't know, because I was very much, for a long time, like, oh, this is the woo-woo world, and now I live in the woo-woo world. I'm like, who are these people? But then I'm like, okay, these are my people for the most part. Um, what brought you into the woo-woo world? Was it an experience you had, or was it you just you knew that you had abilities, or what was it?
Yeah. I like to think like most of us are like Alice in Wonderland. We're just like skipping around and then all of a sudden we fall into this rabbit hole and we're like, uh-oh,
Yeah,
I
I'm not
discovered
gonna.
another world. What happened?
Yeah, it,
Um, but yeah, so I did a lot of personal healing. And so I was doing, but like while I was still doing real estate in 2016. So I started to just go deep within myself. Did I do hypnosis? I know you do hypnosis. No, I didn't do hypnosis at that time, but I had did other things, right? A lot of self work just to kind of become a bigger, better person type of thing. And then so a lot of those retreats were either plant medicine retreats or some type of spiritual retreat. And also when I was younger, I found out very quickly, like when I was 5 years old, that I had abilities. But I found out also very quickly that it wasn't accepted by like my traditional Christian family. So it's like, I explored it a little bit, and then I got like really scared of it. And then so I didn't touch it. I tried to kind of like, block it, suppress it for most of my life. And then when I started my healing journey in 2016, it slowly started to come back. And then by 2022, it was all my skills and abilities were like full on. And then I was like, okay, I've done a lot of work on myself. I've had a lot of coaches. I had done work with shamans. I had done training. I had done all kinds of things. And I was like, I think I'm ready to like also help people in the same way other people had helped me emotionally heal. So
So, okay, so I have a few questions. So one of them, when you were a child, what were you experiencing like before you, I guess, got shut down from that?
mhm.
Like it sounds like some sort of superhero story, like have this power, but like can't use it, can't explore it, can't do anything with it, and then eventually, once you work on yourself, is usually when you find out you have those powers. What was it as a kid? What were you able to?
Yeah, it was clairaudience and clairvoyance. And clairaudience, for anyone who may not know, is being able to hear, you know, hear insight, whether it's from your higher self or whatever you believe in, or the universe, whatever you want to call it. And then also clairvoyance is kind of being able to see things that most people can't see. And then so I started to, and then I would tell my mom certain things that like I would kind of tell her like certain things I probably wasn't supposed to know. And
Like what?
then so they were true, right? So I was kind of like, it was things about people in my family. I'd be like, oh, this person is this, and this. And she'd be like, how do you know that? And I was just like, I just heard it from an angel. And she's like, what? you know? And
Oh
then,
shit. Okay.
yeah, my mom, I think she tried to play along for like the first two times, but
Yeah.
then because everything I was saying was true, I think it worried her as well. And so I don't think she doubted that I had abilities. I think she was worried about like me growing up and not knowing how, like what to do with that. So she kind of she almost thought I had like a mental illness, or she didn't want it to turn into that. That's kind of like my insight now as an adult, just because on her side of the family, her mom had schizophrenia. So there was a little bit of that fear, like, okay, my daughter has a gift and it's okay for right now because she's a kid, but I don't want it to harm her or to destabilize her in the future.
Right. And yeah, I mean, that's so, like, it's got to be hard, and like that's what I mean, what were you kind of able to get from that? Like, were you just like, did it make you feel like you were not supposed to, like it was, it was wrong or bad, or that it was, something that, yeah, I need to just totally, what my
Yeah.
intuition is telling me, do the exact opposite.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you a little bit of a shocking story, and it might be a little triggering, but I think it has a good ending. My dad was having an affair, and I knew without any proof, and so that was one of the things that I had said to my mom, and then it proved to be true like a few days later. So but because
Oh,
it proved to be true, that wasn't necessarily a great thing. It caused a little bit of chaos in my family. So that's what kind of shut me down. It was like, oh, I wasn't supposed to say that. It's true. So I thought that the truth is okay, but it's not okay in this situation. So and that was a little bit of a childhood trauma. And I know you understand this because you do hypnosis. So for 30 years, I didn't know what my core wound was. I had no idea. I had blacked out that whole situation from me telling my mom. It wasn't until later that I had the memory come back when I went to go tell her, like, hey, I think dad's having an affair. And then when we actually like walked in on him together, it was like a big shocker. So that's kind of like what shut me down. Obviously, as a kid, you're like, whoa, that is a big thing for a 5-year-old to undergo. So I think rightfully so, I just kind of detached from the intuitive abilities. But I think it came back at the right time. Like I don't have any regrets, and I love both of my parents. I don't blame my mom or my dad for, because they didn't know how to support me as an intuitive child. So
Okay, a couple questions again. So the first one, so what was it in your healing where that came up? Where where were you and how did that come up? Because yeah, if it's something that's so suppressed and it's like, oh yeah, shit, okay, that's a big one. Like that's like
that's a
and
doozy.
without addressing and working on that, the rest of it's just sort of putting a Band-Aid on a huge gaping wound. Um,
Yeah.
it was that I don't know. So yeah, like how did that come about and what
Yeah.
was
Can I
that?
talk about plant medicines on the show?
Sure, yeah, please.
Okay, okay. I know it's a touchy topic sometimes, but yeah, I went to, it was in 2016. I went to my first ayahuasca ceremony for my birthday, but I didn't know I signed up for it. That, which is another story that's probably pretty long, but just the summary, I thought I was going to this yoga retreat because at the time they didn't put ayahuasca on their website because
Was
I
this in
think
Mexico? I'm sorry.
this was Costa Rica.
Costa Rica. Okay, all
Costa
right.
Rica, and great facility, by the way. And now they have more, and that was the first year that they opened. So I think that they were still working with their marketing, or they have their license. So I'm not sure if the license, who knows what was happening, but so I went just thinking I was going to go to like a yoga place and just do some breath work and like self-development workshops. And
Oh
I
shit.
show up, and the first night, there's like a celebrity shaman from Peru who's been doing, who's been serving medicine since he was like 7, right? He's like really raised and grown into that culture. And so I did, and I didn't know what I went there for, but once I got used to, like, I saw people doing it and I talked to a lot of people, they were like, yeah, join us. Even though you don't know what it is, you ended up here for some reason. I'm like, yeah, you're kind of right. And it was the eve of my birthday. So I knew at midnight I was turning 30. And I was like, well, 30 is a big number, and somehow I ended up here. And so I did the ceremonies first night. It was a little rough the first night, but I ended up doing it 6 or 7 nights thereafter because it was so, after I got through the first night, the rough night, I realized how much trauma I was working through, and
Sure.
that whole memory that we just talked about, the story with my dad, the memory I had of being intuitive and knowing about his lifestyle and then sharing it, that came back. And then, so by the third night of the ayahuasca, I was like, oh, I'm finally understanding my life. Like now I understand why my dad and we had like this, I love my dad. Like now we're great friends, but and I had always been a daddy's girl, but there was something in our relationship that was like a pink elephant in the room. I couldn't figure it out. But that
Yeah.
experience allowed me to have so much more compassion for him and my mom, and then know more about myself. So just to answer your question, to summarize that again, it was that retreat, that 1 week retreat that really, I feel like it was 30 years of therapy in 1 week. There was a lot for me to unpack, and then once I went home, I took like 2 to 3 years or more to really integrate everything.
And I mean, how do you, I mean, yeah, like being able to do that much that fast, was it so afterwards, what was going through your head? Were you, I mean, everything, you have all these new connections and new epiphanies and whatnot, and things are now able to heal. Are you say at that point you're kind of in that middle of that tightrope. Where did you go on that tightrope once you were leaving that the retreat?
Yeah, I was really vulnerable when I got back. I didn't understand what integration meant at the time. And I'll say before I left, people used to think I was like the biggest bitch. Like they were like, you're rude, you're mean to men. Like my little sister, poor thing, she'd be like, oh my God, like don't tell people, like don't upset my sister. She's like a ticking time bomb. So that's where that's a little bit about my personality before I went in, and then coming out, I was just like this softened, like little dove. Like, like a lot of the things that were bothering me unconsciously, I started to unpack them. I'm not going to say I was completely like integrated and healed when I got back, but a lot of weight got lifted off of me. And then I was able to continue journaling. And for the first time in my life, I was actually able to sit down and start doing like 10-minute meditations. Prior to going to that retreat, I couldn't, just had too much mental pressure and I couldn't really go inside myself. It was a big struggle. So yeah, I think when I got back, the tightrope, I did go to an extreme. I had cut off a lot of ties. So I was working a particular job that wasn't healthy for me. So I quit, I blocked numbers. So I was like, and I had a boyfriend that never heard from me again. And he dropped me off at the airport, right? Thinking he was going to see me when I got back. And like, he never, so it was just like this cold turkey, like light switch that I just turned off.
What you needed, though.
It's
Is
exactly what
you
you
needed.
I wouldn't be here today.
Yeah. And so let's see. So how did, like, I don't know. So if someone has, and I don't know, 'cause this one of those hard things, like if you know or have a feeling, since you are have some of those abilities to have more, be able to tell someone's feeling that has sort of a similar story of a lot of work that they need to do, or that could be greatly helped with some experience such as that. Is there a way to tell them, or is it just like they have to find it on their own? Like you can say something, are they gonna listen, or are they gonna believe you? Or also sometimes I've experienced with people like that, they think this one thing is what it is that's causing this block, but then there's some, 9 times out of 10 there's something before that that they had no clue about, and then like, oh shit,
Absolutely.
like that's something. So how do you deal with it? Do you have clients that come to you with those kinds of things, and
Yeah.
have to, and then like if they have to relive it of some sort, how do you tell them that you do that? I guess it's kind of a couple of questions there.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you do hypnosis because you know like what it entails. Like, yeah, like 80% of the time people think their issue is one thing, and it's that plus a whole bunch of things underneath that iceberg that are actually more closer to the root cause, if not the root cause itself. So yeah, I've definitely had clients and that come to me thinking like and half the time they don't know what they need. They're like, some people are like, I think it's this, but I don't really know. Just help me. Like they're just like, hey, they hear a little bit about my transformational story and they're like, if anyone knows what it's like to transform like a 360, then it's you or you're one of them. So I was lucky to really like create that trust with the people who found me one way or another. But yeah, with I'm trying to remember your other questions there.
So one was where would, or like when someone, like how do you get someone to be like, hey, I need to work on myself? And then the other one was um what the
Okay,
other
let
one
me
was.
let me answer that one because I think I'll forget them
Okay,
if they're bunched together.
perfect.
But yeah, so this is where my intuitive abilities really helped me in the beginning of my business and still do today. I tell people like, hey, do you want me to like tap into your energy? Do you want me to tap into the universe to see like what really we need to work on. Like, what do we need to bring to awareness? Some people say no, and that's totally fine. And I still work with them. I take them down this path of asking them certain questions. It's high quality questions that give me information, but also give them the information that they need to decide to do more, to do healing, or to do more investigating, or to unpack their past, or whatever it is. And then if they say yes to some of the intuitive work, I feel like that half the time, maybe most of the time, it's a cheat code. We just get information so quickly within like 5 minutes that would have took me an hour and a half if with the other path, right? When people are like, no, I don't really believe in that. So, but help me, but I don't feel comfortable going down that route. I'm like, okay, great. So we do the questions, but with intuitive info, it's a little bit quicker. And then once I start to bring that information to light, you know, like, hey, this is your root cause, or this is your core trauma. That's the word I was looking for. These are your core traumas. We need to go deeper into these to really unpack the emotion that's stuck there. You know, your inner child is stuck at this age and this time with the thing that happened with the bike. You know, we gotta go there. We gotta do this, not in a way to re-traumatize. I think that was your other question. I was so big on not re-traumatizing people because I had experiences in traditional talk therapy at some point in my life when I was younger that just made me feel worse when I left the therapy session, not better. So, but that's the beauty of the type of spiritual and emotional work I was doing, is we didn't need to re-traumatize the person in order for them to navigate through the past experiences and then to transcend them.
So how does that work? If you don't mind giving away some of the magic details, because yeah, if there's a way to get around it, I'm without having to, because like with mine, it's re-experience it again and then make it less and less impactful until it's not as impactful. But they do have to do it, yeah, like re-experience it. So how do you do
Yeah.
it where you do not?
Well, and
It's
I'll just say
interesting.
that method is also effective for anyone who's questioned it. It's just the brain needs to, sometimes, I'll say for some folks, sometimes for some people, that way I'm not talking in definitive language, the brain does need to experience it again so it can choose a different response. Right. That's where the healing is. That's where the integration is re-experiencing it, choosing a different response, placing a different meaning on it. Now there's a different story. Now the person is less disempowered. Now they're more empowered, blah, 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 blah. Life goes on happily ever after. Right.
Right.
But there's so many ways, again, you know, doing energy work, being intuitive. There's so many ways I do it because I've done so many modalities. I'll say one that I can share now is visualization. So it is recreating the scenario just a little bit, except the person is experiencing it third person, which also does something, as you might know, for the brain.
Yeah, that's how mine is too. It's
Okay.
like watching it on a screen, like at a movie
Okay.
theater. So yeah, it's like the same with
Okay.
that
So
part.
yeah, I don't do watching it on a screen, but they are third person with their inner child, and they're
Oh, good.
speaking
Okay.
to them. They are telling them, hey, I understand how upset you are right now. Your feelings are valid. Like, they're actually interacting with their inner child in their visualization,
Cool.
and the inner child is interacting back. So in my world, we actually don't believe it's a visualization. In the shamanic training that I've done, we believe that it's actual time traveling, just because of quantum physics. And if we're using that as a base theory, then we believe that everything exists in the now. That's a whole rabbit hole, but and I'll
Yeah,
leave that there. So yeah, that's one way to do it.
cool. And so, I mean, do you have people that, like, when you, I don't know, like, what if you tell them like you gotta do this work to get to this area? Do you have people that sometimes start to back up then, or sort of like, I don't know what to do, and then what happens then after that? What do you do? I mean,
Yeah,
do
there
you
is a
let
little bit of resistance. Typically it shows up in logistical ways. You know, someone's like, I forgot I had an appointment today. Or
that?
or they just keep rescheduling and rescheduling. And then I'm like, you know, then I know to check in because I know that their conscious mind or their ego or whatever is like, we don't want to go down that route today, or we just don't know what the result is going to be. We don't know if this is safe for us to do healing with Vanessa or anyone else. And so I just work with the person. But typically once the session starts, I carry people through. A few of the feedback that I've gotten is they're like, wow, I feel like I took plant medicine, but I didn't, because most of the time people were experiencing somewhat of what I experienced in my plant medicine journey. Remember the story about how I was able to access a repressed memory. And I
Right.
know you probably do this too through hypnosis. I do it without hypnosis, but helping people unlock, and again, with the intuitive abilities, I'm able to kind of see things in their childhood. And then I rehash it like, hey, your sixth grade birthday, or like whatever. And the cake had the dinosaur on it. And they're like, oh my God, I forgot about that day. And then just giving them details so I could connect with them and then walk them through it. Yeah, it just really helps, and it carries them through. And then towards the end of the session, I'm really careful about clearing the energy. Again, I'm a woo-woo person, so clearing the energy, making sure that they've moved through the emotional processes, right? There's 3 steps through the emotional process from one perspective. And so making sure they kind of complete as much of that cycle as possible before the session ends. And then of course it carries out and completes as people sleep and go on about their day too.
Yeah, that's a good idea to clear that afterwards. I mean, yeah, there's a lot that went through that, and it's just could linger. And yeah, it's good point there. And so, I mean, like, okay, so then when they get past that, and it's, a day or two later, are they reaching out to you at all? Or are you reaching out to them? Or are they on their merry way and doing their thing? Or how's that work?
Yeah, well, most of the time, so for my healing work, it's a 3-month program. That was my main offer. It
Cool.
still is. I don't promote it as much, but I still have a lot of people, like existing clients, still going through their 3-month. Now I'm shifting a little bit into purpose work. I'll probably always keep the emotional healing, but I think it'll be like by applicant only. But yeah, no, people are with me for 10 sessions in 3 months. And
Okay.
sometimes people they complete those sessions within 5 months because they're a little slower, and that's okay, because it's a lot to integrate, the first 30, 40 years of our lives. But yeah, typically I'm seeing them every 2 weeks, and we're checking in on like Voxer, especially if it was a heavy session. I'm definitely checking in, just giving them tips on what they could do in between sessions. And then I see them again. And then as the 10 sessions progress, it's like they're by session 6 or 7, we're not even dealing with past stuff anymore. We're done with that. We're moving on into like more of their present day, just helping them understand themselves. And then by the end of the program, it's like they have more tools on how to create a life from empowerment, and regardless of what did or didn't happen to them.
And so if people are wanting to get to those tools of empowerment and feeling better and feeling great, and working with you and finding where you are, how are they going to do that?
How do they find me?
How do they find you? How do they work with you?
Yeah. So my website is sacredsoulenergetics.com. And you could also find me on Facebook. It's sacred 2_soul 4_. If you don't remember all the underscores, by the time you put in soul, it'll come up.
Okay, okay, 2 underscores and 4 underscores. Okay, I didn't know you could go that way, but
I know. I
that's
really
cool.
wanted that name and it was taken. So I had to do a bunch of underscores.
Yeah, I like that the underscore, it didn't really have much of anything until the social media days. No, then all underscores started coming up and everything. And I like its use. I wish we would have had it as a use when we were younger. Even in even in school, having an underscore for something, I think that could have been something neat to have, but
Yeah.
underscores. But yeah, so yeah, I don't know. It's it's good. And then what about your podcast?
Oh yeah, my podcast is Sacred Souls. And so you could just search that, in either Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, Sacred Souls with Vanessa Soul. If you punch in my name, Vanessa Soul, that'll easily pop up on both platforms.
Awesome. All right. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on. I got to
Thank you. I can't wait to have you
yeah.
on my show. I
Yeah,
know
me
it's gonna be
too.
in a few months, but yeah,
I
it'll be
get to
fun.
sit back and enjoy that, but I got to sit back and enjoy this. So it worked out kind of all right. I didn't have to do too much. I didn't have to, yeah. It worked out well. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
And yeah, well, I'll see you at least in September. And yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Rusty. Bye.
All right. See you later. All right. That's Vanessa Soul. So hit her up, check her out, work with her. And thank you everybody for listening. You want to check out me, rustydiamond.net or hypnosisisgreat.com. Thank you everyone for listening, watching, whatever you're doing, taking it in, however you take it in. And that is the show, man. Boom.
It's Rusty Diamond, motherfucker. It's Rusty Diamond, motherfucker.